Hi guys, and thanks for tuning in to Design and a Half. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the freelancing future and what this especially entails for us designers and similarly to all digital jobs, because I think whatever happened to digital jobs and freelancing and whatever's going to happen to digital jobs and freelancing is going to apply to roughly more than just design or just development in the future. So that being said, let's just get started. So ever since this crisis started, I've seen a lot of people switching more and more to gig type jobs and freelancing rather than being employed. And this is also due to the fact that that companies themselves have been left for the most part dry funds, and a lot of them are struggling to meet their deadlines, to be able to pay the people they employ with, so they had to make do with little money. That being said, most of them, what they try to do is turn this around by just hiring a lot of freelancers, and this created an opportunity for them to bring down costs by the fact that freelancers, as opposed to normal employees, don't have to be so sort of protected in a way. So they don't have the same benefits as normal employees have. And that means for me as a potential employer, some added benefits. Like if I don't need you right now, I can just let you go for this month, so I can bring my costs down significantly, and I can just get back to you next week, or not next week, obviously, next month, and resume sort of our transactions, our normal businesses. If for example I need to, if my clients need to, and this snowballs into an effect where you don't necessarily have as much certainty over your income and your revenue as a person, but as a company it's sort of better for you, because you can rely on not rely, you have a better grasp over your funds, and you're able to manage them in a more optimum way, if you will, as opposed to earlier when you would be just spending a lot of time, sort of a lot of cash on a physical place where you have to bring people in, you have to spend some money on private pensions and so forth, which would not necessarily be the case if we're talking about the gig or freelancing economy. In a freelancing economy, basically it's sort of like a bidder's game, where me as a designer or you as a developer or XYZ as a HR person or whatever would be bidding their services for the sort of for the winning pitch, if you will. This is obviously okay for a company who's going to look to downsize their costs, because they're going to look for the highest value, lowest cost type of person, and they're probably going to stick with that person if they feel like the value that person has brought is up to par with what they actually need. And sort of this is what I was meaning when I said about freelancing future, because I really think that this sort of situation is going to be increasingly popular in the future. Why? I think this current situation and this current status quo, where people have jobs or some of us, most of us have jobs, this is sort of a temporary situation until the next wave of COVID-19 hits, and it's going to hit pretty hard. And my suspicion is a lot of governments are going to resume the whole lockdown situation, and that obviously is going to hamper a lot of businesses, that in turn will affect other businesses that used to deal with them. This is sort of like a dependency tree, if you will, because say the hotel businesses are hit, this also means that a lot of other businesses which were used to dealing with hotel businesses or hotels and restaurant businesses are going to be hit. For example, restaurants would have needed supply and demand companies, shipment companies, catering. Those people also needed graphic designers or potentially designers to do flyers and advertisement and social media campaigns. Obviously, since they don't have that many customers, those are going to drop. Obviously, those people are going to need jobs. So this is why I meant when I said it's going to impact us all, and the effect is going to be similar to a domino. That's the problem, since the current economy, as the way it's structured right now, it's very codependent on its adjacent sectors. So technology is dependent on all the other sectors around it that are referring to it to be able to survive. So hotel and restaurants are just one of those things, but they themselves, if you take them out of the equation, you take out of the equation some people who are doing like fruits and vegetables, who are growing animals for slaughter, who are doing supplies. I don't know. How can I properly put this, like soap and stuff like that, which is usually put into hotels and restaurants. Like those types of services are going to be missing, and those businesses themselves have their own impact on other services, like in some cases, for example, development services, like having an CRM application to be able to manage your clients and so on. So everything is interlinked in this social social economic crisis that we're in. And more than that, globalization itself has brought this interlinking of services between themselves, and not only the services, but actually geolocations as well, since we're kind of depending on specific locations for specific goods, and especially in this particular situation that we're in right now, and as it was revealed back when the whole crisis started, we're actually very, very dependent on raw materials coming from Asia. And this is a huge problem if you're thinking long term, because that makes us dependent on each other. Say right now, if something bad would happen in terms of diplomatic incident, and say China would, for example, go to declare war on the US, this would affect a lot of additional actors, if you will, including the European Union and so on. This would also affect raw material shipping and so on, because we actually depend on a lot of shipping materials to get them from not shipping materials, sorry, on raw materials. We depend on a lot of them to ship them from Asia, especially China or India, and that's sort of a problem, because in the long run, this sort of dependency makes you vulnerable to situations like the COVID crisis, where something happens and you're suddenly left with your pants down, which is really, really awful thinking in a long run game. So I'm definitely hoping that in this specific case things are going to improve, and a lot of the production of raw materials is going to be brought back to Europe, because this would mean revitalizing the European economy in terms of raw material production. This would automatically mean agriculture in some situations. However, it would also mean driving up costs. But driving up costs is not necessarily something bad, and let me explain why. Because we're used to paying a small amount of money for goods which are usually quite crap, and this is sort of the consumer mentality that tells us, dude, I just want to pay like $150 for this phone, even though I'm absolutely aware of the fact that this phone is going to last me perhaps 1 year, maybe less, and I don't really care about how much this thing costs you. My psychological mental model about how much this phone is worth tells me that if it's going above this price, I'm not going to buy it. And this is actually what's creating and driving this whole race for the bottom in terms of pricing for a lot of goods. But however, getting back on track to what we usually said, what we had set out to discuss about, and this is the design jobs, if you will. I think this is going to become more and more popular because, as I said earlier, it's really flexible in terms of what it means for the companies, and companies have a significantly smaller liability from a legal standpoint than they have if they would hire you as an employee. So that's definitely a benefit for them. Another thing that's probably going to happen with this, I know, shift towards freelancing, is that this current feeling of buyer's market, which I see happening in Western countries, because I can only speak about Western countries while relating from my standpoint, where I am in an Eastern country where we have a seller's market, not a buyer's market. And I've definitely compared our market to the Western market due to the fact that I've been applying to several jobs on several occasions, and I've noticed how amazingly difficult it is to actually land a job. I've complained several times about the fact that people just leave you dead cold, so they don't even answer, they don't say anything about this when you apply to their jobs. And this means that there's a supply that exceeds the current demand for talent. And the funny thing is that I've seen so many recruiters complaining on LinkedIn about the fact that there's such a high demand for talent, but people just don't apply, and that's actually not true. There's a lot of people applying, and I've seen a lot of posts from fellow UX people that have applied to hundreds upwards of jobs, and they ended up probably maybe with 1 or 2 offers on the table out of the 100, which, sorry, but it seems way too low if you think about it. So out of those 100 applications, I've noticed that about 64%, 65% of them are not even looked at. Like they get absolutely no answer. About 40% of them just get denials, and they don't go further into being actually screened or talked to on the phone. And out of the remaining few, which is around 10%, maybe less, is those that actually you end up talking with someone, you end up rejected, and then you decide not doing this anymore, which was my personal case in a lot of situations. However, getting back to our initial discussion, I think this is the whole thing with the pressure of going freelance. This is going to put additional pressure on the people who are freelancing and are looking for gigs, because the competition is going to mount significantly for everyone who is going to be looking for a job. And I think this is not necessarily a good thing for us as potential gig seekers, but it's going to definitely be a really cool thing for companies, because they are going to be able to drive the price even further down. The problem is that a lot of people don't seem to realize that even though you're driving the price of the services down because you can afford to do it, at some point you're going to hurt the whole market sector you are in. For example, if you're living in Europe, say you're in Germany, France, whatever, and you're looking to actually get someone to hire someone for a specific design job or whatever job, who's a freelancer, and you're driving the price down by just not accepting people with a specific price, and you end up with a really small bottom line that nobody in Europe can actually I don't know, comply to, if you will, that's going to create a problem because like just think about the implications here. So if you do that, what ends up happening is that everybody in Europe is going to have to somehow drop their prices at some point just to be able to keep up with the smaller prices coming from Asia, which is not okay, because if you think about it, we have different sort of needs here in terms of costs. Like our electricity bills are higher, we have higher water bills, we have higher gas bills, and so on and so forth. The problem is that you would actually need to have sort of this protection system around particular areas of the globe, and this leads, unfortunately, back to not being global anymore. This is sort of the paradox that globalization with itself attracts this sort of pouring down of those who used to be sort of in a minimum, not in a minimum wage, in a mediocre financial position. They are going to be driven into poverty, whereas people who are sort of in a not so great financial position, they are going to be elevated for a specific time period until they reach the other one's medium position, if you will, and then things are going to slowly start to even out, and then the other guys are going to come back in and bid a smaller price, and things are going to leverage back on the other hand. So this is the problem that you have when you're always going down with when you're always seeking the smallest price. That this is why I fear that this whole gig economy type might not be very successful in the long run. I think it's something that could be temporary, perhaps for a couple of years. In some specific cases, or for some specific people, it might be a definite thing because it works for them, but I'm not really so sure, or I'm not really so convinced it's going to be a permanent thing, because it's not feasible from an economic standpoint. At least that's my honest opinion. Especially if you're thinking about the fact that jobs like engineering and design or engineering designers, maintenance workers, they're always going to be employee only. So I doubt they're going to turn out into gig players, if you will, because it's just not going to be possible to do that. Think about, for example, hiring someone on a gig-based contract, for example, to do maintenance on a nuclear reactor. That would be inconceivable. It's for example, you need someone there permanently, and there's absolutely no benefit to you not having that person hired on a permanent basis and just on a temporary basis. I mean, you'd not be optimizing any type of costs, you'd just be adding some risks on top of your situation in that case. However, for HR people, designers, developers, DevOps, sysadmins, recruiters, tech support, for example, and perhaps even accountants, freelance/gig style jobs might be interesting in the future, because that would give them a little bit of flexibility in terms of choosing who they want to be working with. And I think there's going to still be a lot of work to be done for those types of people, like developers, designers, or tech support and accountants will definitely have stuff to do. I don't think they're going to be running out of jobs, to be perfectly honest. There is, however, another aspect to be said about the whole gig economy thing, and that is the fact that usually these people that are running gig jobs or freelance a lot, they don't have any type of social security in the wider sense. So they don't have sick leave, they don't have paid holidays. This is actually quite important, because if you think about it, as a potential freelancer, you cannot take time off unless you do so at your own expense, which is totally different than what an employee has. For example, an employee who is being hired by a company has a predetermined set of days that are available at his disposal to be taken as he wants them, and he can enjoy that time without having to worry about the fact that his pension is not going to be paid. And that means whenever he retires, he's going to receive a smaller pension due to the fact that he had time off. And this is actually quite important, because this is going to be this puts a lot of pressure on people on who do gigs and are freelancers, and is definitely unhealthy in the absolute most humane way possible, in the sense that you're going to just run yourself into the ground if you work non-stop, and it's absolutely unhealthy, which is why in some countries, for example in America and in Spain, there's a lot of debate around this subject of gig workers and the fact that they need to have some sort of protection. For example, Uber and Lyft have been told by some judges in California to treat their drivers as employees rather than independent contractors. And this is mostly due to the aforementioned reasons, because they as a gig worker, you don't have any type of sick leave, and you don't have any paid holidays, and that's really bad for you. And it's absolutely easy for a company to just sack you the minute that they believe you're not working as much as they need you to be working, even though you can't work anymore because you're obviously tired and you need some time to recuperate. And this is very not okay going long term, and it's worrisome. And a lot of companies have started to actually speak up about the whole empowering the gig worker thing, and they're not happy that for example, some judges seem to be giving or actually forcing these companies or encouraging these companies to give more rights to the gig workers and actually treat them similarly to employees. However, if you think about it, the governing body between two people that are in a contract, so to say, in this specific case, the gig worker and the company, is like they are bound by a legal contract. That contract per se can always be modified. They can have addendums, they can have extra modifications added to them later after being signed. However, each one of those modifications has to be approved by both parties, and this is why there's so much debate going on about this whole situation about gig workers, because companies obviously don't want to lose that benefit of being able to discard gig workers as fast as they want to without having to deal with the implications. Because one of those implications of ditching sort of gig workers is the fact that non-gig workers, is that you have to pay them termination fee, which is not the same as gig workers. So if you have a gig worker and you have a contract with him, a freelancer, you don't have to pay him anything for a termination fee. Like there is no such thing as a termination fee in case of freelancers, unless of course that is stipulated in a contract. But if it was, I doubt a company would agree to it if you would add it as a freelancer. So there's that. Another thing that is worthy to mention about this whole situation of freelancers and actually working from home is looking at how companies will either have to offer signing bonuses for equipment for those people that don't have their own gear, or have a way to actually deduce that upfront money from the payment those companies make for those freelancers that are being sort of hired in contract. The problem is that if you as a freelancer say, dude, I have no computer but I want to work with you, in most cases companies are just going to scoff and laugh you off and just not give you the time of day. However, we're in a different reality right now with this whole COVID-19 situations and situation, and with all of these people seeking jobs. And this is definitely, I think, something which companies might think about, because you have sort of the benefit of having an employee for a predetermined amount of time, for as long as they need to cover the expense of the physical equipment you buy them, and at the same time you're getting your money's worth in terms of work for that specific equipment. So it's sort of like this, you're going to work for me for 4 months or 5 months or whatever I deem worthy, and just cover the cost of the computer that I'm buying. This means that this specific item that you're getting, this computer, is going to be fully dampened in a financial way in about, I don't know, 12 months, which means obviously I get to pay you a little bit less by having an upfront payment for you to get your equipment, but at the same time I know I can rely on you being still here and being sort of active into the in the job I'm keeping you on, just because otherwise if you leave you'll have to reimburse me for the whole purchase of that hardware equipment I just gave you. So that's sort of a way to alleviate the whole hardware situations for people who don't have the specific hardware needs that companies sort of require, if you will. That it's just it's a patch for that specific situation. Okay guys, thanks for tuning in for this episode. I hope you liked it. I hope you subscribe, and I would be really happy if you would comment and let me know what your thoughts are about this whole crisis situations, especially if you have a company and you disagree with what I just said. I would be more than happy to know what your point of view is. This is sort of a debate. It's not set in stone. These are just some thoughts I have with regards to this. I would be happy to be proven wrong, should that be the case. And I'm definitely looking for people to engage and talk about this whole subject, and maybe, I know, give their own thoughts on it, either in the YouTube on my YouTube channel, or on the Podbean site, or whatever you guys feel like, or on the Facebook page if you want to. That also works. Have an amazing night, guys, and until next time.